Find yourself a booth, order up a cold one. This is the Spring Bar.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Spring Bar. Glad to have you here. I am Florida Mike. Today, sitting with my co-host, the alter ego of Joe and the OC, Stan. How you doing, Stan?
Doing good. Well, because you got when you're rocking.
When you're rocking, yeah. I don't think you actually you showed when you announced
When I got my new shirt alert.
You got your new shirt alert, yeah. You never showed what the back of it looked like, so that's
pretty killer.
Pretty cool, man.
It's pretty killer. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know where this came from. I'm not sure who it was, but Bolova, if you're ready to start a bowling league, I'm rolling. That's all I'm saying.
But that's an eBay find, right?
Yeah,
I've looked.
I don't know what it is. It's a synthetic completely. It's not cotton, and it's warm.
Oh,
So
is it really?
I'm gonna be spritzing a little bit here in a minute.
I've tried looking on eBay for Bulova shirts and things like that, and nothing's really come up. Nothing interesting, at least.
Oh, you gotta be diligent, my man. Gotta be diligent.
I'm kind of jealous.
You should be. I look good.
I know you do. And I'm not even wearing my Bulova hat today, but at least I have our show shirt on, so there's that.
Sartorial choices.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. New watch alerts. I'll let you go first because you have a killer piece.
I do.
The be all end all of this particular watch, I would say.
It's an interesting find. I have in today is the 665-1 with the killer handset.
Yep.
The dial is gorgeous. The bezel is gorgeous. It's like a 9 out of 10. I'm really impressed with it. So I'm pretty pleased. And so I got that. And then
here, hold on. Now we got to discuss this a little bit.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay. Again, that is the Sea Hunter to end all Sea Hunters. That's the Grail Sea Hunter, really, if you get into it. That's the one.
It can be. It depends. Some people will consider like the straight up Explorer dial, that 12369 with the alpha hands and the no date. They'll put that as sort of the pinnacle. So there's a bit of a toss up, and then there's the ones with the lollipop seconds hands. It's sort of like the Sea Devil.
Well, yeah. Now so those are popular. Dial. I will give you that. However, this one, because that handset goes by different names. It goes by the Ranger handset, the Shovel handset, the Snakehead handset. So call it what you will.
I call it the Calypso handset. Thank you very much.
The Calypso, that works too. Has the ETA movement in it. So it is, I believe, the only 666 from either Bulova or Caravelle that has an ETA movement in it.
So it's got the Swiss movement. It's also got, I believe it's a Swiss case, and there should be.
And it's the Swiss case. So they say that it's
Swiss on the dial.
The only 100% fully Swiss made watch
from Bulova's cheaper line.
From that whole line.
Which it's also really funny because this is like a 1969, 1968 vintage, and the oceanographers, like the oceanographer G that's coming out at the same time, that's got the Bulova movement in it. It's got the 11 series movements, and so that's like the last series that Bulova made in house. So it's really kind of interesting. So like that's where their budget was to grab a Swiss ETA movement and hand or a automatic movement for it. So it's a really nice watch. I mean, it's smaller than I was expecting. I was thinking it to be about 38, 39. It's probably closer to 36, 37. And
so is it that small?
It wears little. Yeah, it's because of the way that the bezel presents, it wears smaller than the Black Pre-Snorkel.
Really?
Which is the other new watch alert, because I got those back from you.
No, hold on. We're not done yet. We have to get into the little oddities about this, because you asked me, you said, well, I don't, I think the loom is all off, but
Right.
that's the way
Right.
that it came. Your handset was a different shade of loom than what was on the dial. And in fact, even on the dial, in the pictures that you sent me and the pictures that I've seen of it, it almost looks like the numerals are even a slightly different shade than what the hour markers are.
It's possible. Like there's the numerals are closer to the handset, and then the
Yeah,
hour markers have really turned like the same color as the loom pip on the bezel.
like a nice cream.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
It's that
handset
sort
is
of that.
more of like a greenish
Yeah,
hue. Yeah,
yeah. So
which is
I mean,
cool.
there's potentially like three different colors of loom
Yeah,
on
which is
there.
neat. It's just that odd quirk that just
It
sets it
is, but
apart, but it makes
you
it
know,
neat.
when you start looking at the way that this watch presents, it's also sort of a question of if there's been a redial or if there's been a reloom of it at some point. So it's hard to say. It could be that it's an aftermarket handset or like a new old stock handset. You just don't know, since I don't have the provenance of the watch. I don't have a service history of the watch. eBay find.
Well, but if you look, the majority of the pictures that you see of these watches, they have those different shades of loom. So I am
Right.
led to believe that what you have is fully original. And if you see the ones where all the loom matches, those would be, in my eyes, the ones that have been redone.
Right. It could
But
be. Could
the
be
biggest oddity of the whole thing, and I sent you this list and you're like, oh wow, look at that. I'm like, okay, is he going to buy it? I'll be shocked if he does, because it doesn't say 666 on the dial. And you have told me once,
It
if it
does.
doesn't say 666, there's no room for it in your collection.
That's close to being true. That's close to being true. This it falls into the Devil Diver line. It's the beginning of the Sea Hunter from the Caravel side of things, which I've been sort of picking up a few of recently. I think that out of the last couple of watches that I've got, they've been Caravels. And it's a 665-1. So if you do the math,
I guess
that's 666. So it works for me. That's my mental gymnastics that allows it to stay.
There's no depth rating on the case back.
There's nothing. And also these ones, like the that dress diver that I got. Did I even show that one? Have we seen that?
I don't know, but let's show it again because it's cool. And now here's the other part: is that one says 666 on the dial, but you have it on a leather strap.
For the moment,
who even are you?
I've got it on a leather strap. Yeah, because that's the only 19 millimeter strap I've got.
You see,
it's a weird one, and so it's got the same thing though. So the problem on the case back for both of these watches, they don't have your standard Bulova date code. There's not a letter and then a number. There is a square with a number inside of it. And I'm not familiar with that. I don't know what that is. I don't know if the square is just so, because this is when Caravel first comes out. These are when these watches begin. The brand starts in the 60s. And whether or not that they just knew they were all coming out in 60, and so you didn't need to put a number code, I don't know. I don't know what the logic behind it. And so there's, I've got this one's got a square and then a 9 in the middle of it, which would seem to be 69, since that's what the movement is. It's weird, man. It's really, really weird.
So you did open it. So the movement is stamped.
Oh no, that's based off of the picture. I haven't cracked it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even ready to approach that yet.
What about your super waterproof? Did you open that one up?
I can't open that one up because of the way that the case back is. So there's a different type of release, and it's like a 2-part case back, and I don't have the tool for it. So I'm not, the case back tools that I have won't open that up, and I'm not willing to screw that one over just to see what's inside. Since it's working just fine right now.
Yeah.
So that I don't see a need to really open that up just to satisfy my curiosity. When, like, what am I going to do? Get rid of it? Not likely.
So I figured out what it is. The Sea Hunter with no 666, and then the 666 on leather is because Stan. When you become Stan, he does crazy things like that.
There it is.
Because Joe would never do anything like that.
Oh, now that's funny. That's funny.
That is funny.
So the rest of my new watch alert
Yeah.
is the Double Trouble Oreo set here that I just got back from you. And so these are the pre-snorkel Bulova 666 dials, the champagne dial and then the black dial. And so Mike just did a bang up job doing some case work on both of these. So it's a brushed bezel and a high polish on the case. Just gorgeous. Like the case, the crystals on both were kind of marred and a little bit cloudy and just scratched up. And now they are. You can see the dials, and the dials are just really started to pop. It's
well, I've told you several times since having them in my possession, and even when you got them yesterday, that black dial. Oh, it's so nice. That is by far my favorite.
It's really good. It's really good. And so it's the new Caravelle is similar in just about every regard. The lug to lug is probably a little bit smaller, but not by much, like maybe 2 millimeters. So it's a comparable size. It's definitely in that skin diver range.
That surprises me. I would have thought that the new Sea Hunter would have been a little bit larger,
right?
More in that 38 range.
Yeah, it's definitely in more of your 36, 37. So, and what about you, sir? What do you?
Well, we had this conversation the other day. I think this is probably, without going back and listening to our other episodes, the first episode in which I don't necessarily have a new watch. So I'm a little saddened by that. But I do have a new bracelet. Now, we've all seen the pictures of it that I've put up, and everybody seems to agree that it does the watch justice. But I have a style correct bracelet because it's not the Bulova bracelet, and the end links are different, but it's more or less the same style that this watch should be on, and it makes it look fantastic. I love the way it looks on this bracelet. Now, here's the problem with it. It is an expansion bracelet, just like the original is, okay? And it is the scissor or ladder style, okay? But it is small. So it fits very tight on my wrist, and it makes it uncomfortable to wear for more than an hour.
Yep.
So my dilemma is I don't have it with me, but I have a Baldwin expansion bracelet that uses the same style expansion, links. And on those, it says adjustable. So I'm assuming there is a way you can pop those off and make it smaller if you had a smaller wrist, I'm guessing. So I wonder if I could add some to this expansion portion to make it fit a little looser on me. I don't know.
So Oliver, who we've had on talking about Caravelle.
Well, he does the other style.
He does Speedle. Right, those not the scissor.
I need somebody to answer this question.
That's a good question. I don't.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, if it says adjustable, maybe
it says adjustable. So there's probably maybe 6 or 7 of the inner links. These little, what would you call them? Lightning bolt shaped inner links on here that say adjustable on it. So I don't know. Can you pop them off? I don't know. So if you're listening and you've done it and you've either been successful or you've ruined your bracelet, let me know before I do the same to mine.
There. Yes. Yep.
Because it looks great. I love the way it looks on the bracelet. It makes the watch. But
yeah, I agree.
I like to wear it rather than just look at it in the box.
That's fair.
So
what's in the cup? What's in the cup on the wrist?
I have alcohol today.
That's milk.
Well, it is milk. It's milk. It is Italian sweet cream coffee creamer, and it is Fireball. So together they call this Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Now you would usually put some Baileys in here, or you can put some horchata in there, which I don't have. But the Italian sweet cream basically does the same job. It just gives it that little creamier flavor to it, and it works.
Okay. I mean, at least you got alcohol. I don't know.
So I was just gonna say, I see your face, but at least it's alcohol.
You
can't complain.
You do you,
And then
sir. And what are we wearing? Ah,
on the wrist. So we're recording a little early because you will be on vacation, I think, when this episode comes out. So we're kind of
it should be.
prepping, and we're just about to get into the 4th of July weekend. So I'm wearing my Stars and Stripes Chronograph C, the reissue, to kind of prepare for the upcoming weekend. Although
I'm debating on that. I don't have a good 4th of July watch. Used to be my choice. You got a few. You got a few, and I've got nothing that's in the red, white, and blue range. So
do you have something that you can do with straps? Can you play with straps, perhaps?
I don't have a red, white, and blue strap either. I know. I'm very.
This is a problem.
It's a problem. I'm very unpatriotic. I mean, normally my go-to is my great grandfather's Brigadier, the white and gold 1930 something Bulova. I mean, maybe I'll go vintage. So it's American made and American owned.
It is. Today is what? What's today? Thursday?
First.
No, today's Friday.
Today's Friday.
So I would be willing to bet if you get on Amazon right now, you can pick out a red, white, and blue strap, and it'll probably be here by the 4th. They'll deliver it on Sunday.
That's hard. I've had a bunch of stuff that's supposed to come that hasn't shown up yet. So I'm
from
not.
Amazon?
My confidence in Amazon is slipping.
Oh, well.
So.
All right. So moving on. Joe, what do we got on tap for today?
We are discussing handsets. And so this idea that the dial is the face of the watch, but the handset's kind of like the eyebrows. And if you don't have eyebrows, you really don't have a face. Things look sort of off.
Eyebrows tie it all together.
Eyebrows bring it all. So the idea is that, handsets, there are a bunch of different styles and they fit certain designs better. And so we're going to go through, we're going to discuss those just a little bit. And so like the biggest question that you run into when it comes to handsets, is loom or no loom. And so, what's our take on the loom, no loom argument?
So if it's a modern watch, loom works. It seems to fit better on a modern design. You seem to be able to use it more on a modern design. If it's vintage, I could care less. I don't even care if the loom doesn't glow anymore. They could be painted hands in place of the loom, and that is perfectly fine for me. So I'm not one of these people where it needs to be, it's got to be, the loom has to be there, or the loom is bad or whatever. I'll paint over that in a nice shade of cream and call it a day, and I'm happy, because loom don't work on your vintage watches anyways.
Well, I get that part. And the thing that I find really interesting that I've always found kind of fascinating, you look at the Radium Girls stuff, you look at the early, full radium loom on the early watches from the 20s. And so the numbers would glow, but the hands wouldn't. And when you look at those smaller dials on the Art Deco pieces, the hands don't go all the way out to the numbers anyway. So it sort of ruins the point of having some of the loom. It's not like the dial was glowing. So, it's one of those weird spots.
I will say, though, that the correct shade of, not the correct shade, but a good shade of loom is very important on a vintage watch. It's got to be a nice cream or this minty loom that is found in a lot of these older skin divers. I mean, that's what makes it, I think, is if you have a real nice, not molding, blackened shade of loom. I think that does a dial well.
When you really get down to when it comes to the loom as part of it being a functional piece on a watch, you're really into the 1940s. You're really into like the World War II pieces, where that becomes, it becomes more of a functional idea. And then you get into the sports watches that come post-war era, in the 50s and the 60s. And you've got the real, on some of the Fliegers and on the dive watches, you start to see the loom really start to pop. And so the bigger question that comes with the loom or no loom really goes into sort of the style of the hands. And it's a question of like, where's the hand go in relationship to the dial and to where the numerals are? How far out does the minute's hand reach? How far out does the hour's hand reach?
And yeah, and when you look at it that way, having loom on a handset does kind of tie the hands to the dial a little bit better. And the loom can also play into the style of it too. So
Right.
if you have a broad arrow handset, you want to have that nice triangular loom plot, on the hour hand. Some looms are just at the very ends, the tips of the hands. Some fill in the entire handset itself. So there is something to be said about, having a good loom plot.
What's your take on like spade? The spade handset. So you'll see that on some military pieces. You'll see it on a lot of the railroad pieces. And you've got the option between loom and no loom on a lot of those. Do you have an opinion? Do you have a preference?
For something like that, for like a railroad approved piece, it's a no loom on the spade hands. I'm going with no loom on those.
But for a Flieger?
I feel like on a Flieger, you have to have it. It's like, like we're saying, it depends on the application. It really does.
It's a real interesting thing because, and I bring it up, the reason that I bring it up is some of the X-15 Accutron astronauts had a metal spade handset. And so, we're talking absolutely a Flieger style watch in the astronaut, and going on to an X-15 rocket plane. I mean, you can't get much more flyboy than that. But they didn't. Right, they didn't have the loom on that handset, whereas onto the production models and onto the most of the vintage ones, you do get to see a loom handset there as well. And so that's a real big question when it comes down to when we start talking about style and how much. I mean, one of the things that I also think is really interesting when you look at, say, like a cathedral style handset, and that morphs into or evolves into the Mercedes handset, and the fact that you have broken up that surface area with just a little bit of filigree for the wiring, so that way the loom can stay intact. And it just makes you really question or start talking about, I get it, because you don't see a lot of the really large loom plots that are completely open in the vintage watches. And so it's just a question of, maybe they knew that it wasn't going to last that long. Maybe it was too delicate. Maybe it wasn't going to survive the application. It's hard to know, but that it becomes sort of a hallmark of your vintage piece.
So here's your mill ships. Look at the handset on that. Would you call that a cathedral handset?
No, I wouldn't. It's much more of a sort of a leaf or a spade, because it doesn't have anything on the inside.
Okay.
So it's a completely open.
Still, I think a very interesting choice of handsets for that particular watch. Not a handset that I would go with for something like that.
So it's a question of how that came about, what it came from, and I'm willing to bet that the handset that they were working with was very, very similar to the A17A military handset. And so I've had one of those watches, and it's really, really similar, because they were using basically the same movement, like that 10 B and CH. And there was a different designation for the mill ships movement, but it was a hand wound hacking movement with a internal dust cover that they put into the dive watch. And so the handset should be similar, if not identical, but I think they had to lengthen it a little bit because the dial was so much bigger, and you got to make sure that the reach is correct. But it seems to be a similar shape to that, or at least to my eye, to a greater extent.
It almost seems to me like they followed all the specs for the watch, and then they got to the handset, and they were like, "Oh crap, we need hey Joe, bring that handset over here."
What do you got? What's in the box?
On the watch.
What's in the box?
And then they put it on there.
Yeah.
And I love that mill ships. I love everything about that mill ships, except for the handset. I'll be very honest. That handset throws me every time I look at it.
Really?
Yeah. And once I get used to, it is what it is, then I can get back to enjoying the watch as a whole.
Oh no,
that handset for some reason,
especially at all.
That second hand too, the way that has the little loop on it.
Oh, I love the second hand.
Do you?
I love it. I really do.
Design throws me. It just seems like a very odd choice for a very purpose-built dive watch. But I mean, what you're saying is why
so
they use that, makes sense.
Well, but it leads us into this idea of you making or breaking the watch design. What would you put on there instead?
I don't know exactly what I would put on there, to be honest with you. But I just know it wouldn't be that particular handset.
Interesting. See, the handset works for me. It works for me just across the board, and I like the length of it. I like the taper. I like the way that one in particular was designed. But I find that most of, or at least to my mind, a lot of the vintage tool watches, your military watches, the design for those is legibility above all things. And so I know that when I'm looking at the mill ships, telling time is easy. And it's the same thing, even like we had this discussion on the last episode, we're talking about the lady divers and just how well laid out the dial is. But it also comes down to the fact that the handset plays a huge part in the legibility of the watch,
Yeah, that's very true. And so is the handset on the mill ships, is that a white painted handset? I don't remember. Or is that a steel?
A little bit of
no. I'm talking not the loom, but the metal itself. Is that a steel or is that painted white?
I believe it's painted white.
Okay, so see that follows suit with what the 50 fathoms is, because the 50 fathoms has what would you call them? Pencil hands, I guess would be the best way to describe those. And then the other competitor of the time would be the first iteration of the Submariner, also had that style handset too. So maybe I would have followed suit with something like that. I guess that was very much the handset of that time for that particular type of watch. It's just an odd choice to me. That's all.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's one of the reasons I got the watch. No questions asked. So I mean, that sort of takes us really, really smoothly into our kind of comparisons, and we wanted to talk about some of our favorites here. So
yeah. So moving on, we're doing a kind of this or that type episode. So there's so many different types of handsets. I mean, we could sit here all day long and discuss, every single type that there is. But we're kind of picking our favorites, comparing it to what I suppose either the equivalent is or what almost the polar opposite is, and comparing and seeing, which we like better. So this is also going to be a follow along, play along at home kind of episode. So what we're going to do is when this episode comes out, maybe I'll give it a day or two. So usually we go live on a Monday. So maybe on perhaps a Wednesday following, we'll put in the stories of our Instagram, the comparisons, and then we'll put up a poll and see what you guys like. Pick one, what's your favorite of the two, and we'll go from there. So play along with us at home. So getting into our first comparison, we have, I guess, what are two of the most well-known handsets, especially when it comes to dive watches. And we are talking the Mercedes handset and the Snowflake handset. And coming from essentially the same company, if you will, coming out of Rolex, because Tudor uses the Snowflakes, and they're essentially, an offshoot of Rolex.
So the only thing that I've got when discussing these two is that the Mercedes hand has been copied so much. You've got that on a variety of different brands. You've got it on non-dive pieces. You've got it everywhere. It's all over the place.
Is it copied for a reason? Is it copied because it's so good and it does the job so well?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, because looking at the watches that we've got and the watches I've seen with that handset in particular, that the pip on the hours hand, because that's where the Mercedes is always located. It's always on the hours hand. It's never on the minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's always on the hours hand, and it's usually just about the same size as the round hour marker that's on almost every single dial. And so, okay, does that work? Does that add to a legibility standpoint? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if that works as well as it possibly could. The snowflake hand, I don't think that it reaches that much further, but the orientation of it, it is much more of a diamond orientation versus the square of the hour plot, at least on the Tudor. And the other takeaway from that is that the snowflake hand is pretty much exclusively Tudor. Nobody else does it.
Yeah.
Like you've got Seiko mods, but that's about it, right?
Yeah. Snowflake hands, that's my choice. Of the two, I'm going snowflake.
I'm going snowflake too. I would agree.
Here's the thing. Snowflake hands with the square hour markers is the way to go. Okay.
Yes. Not
these round hour markers that they're putting on these BB-58s with the snowflake hand. That doesn't go very well. And there's probably some Black Bay owners that are yelling at us right now. That's a great design. Well, it is. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But in the picture that we're showing here,
I understand the choice. I understand the choice and why they went with it, because it's the iconic thing, and then they're also going back to what their original. Okay, I get it, but yeah, I'm with you on the square. It's like, okay, so if we're moving on, let's get, so we got like the matchstick hand versus the cigarette hand, and so Mike, talk about that, because we talked about it last episode.
So yeah, we kind of got into it last episode. We were going to do a poll last episode, but then we decided we are going to do this one of talking the handsets. So I'm kind of holding off on that. So these are, well, when it comes to matchstick hands, is that a kind of a Caravelle design? Because I haven't really seen anybody else with a matchstick style hand.
I think it's a vintage nod, and it goes back to some of the early loom. Like, so a matchstick hand, essentially we're talking about a very thin sort of baton hand where the tips of them have just been dipped in loom. Yep. So the tip of the hand is going to glow as it goes through, but it's the whole tip. It's not like an insert. It's not an inlay. And the cigarette style hand that we're talking about is usually it's a white baton hand with some color at the tip, and there may be loom running down the center, but the tip color will be contrasting to the handset itself. And so, between the two,
this is a hard one. I like them both.
I do too. I think I'm leaning more towards the cigarette hand.
I'm going to agree with you. And here's why. Number one, it's the handset of choice for the bull of a surfboard. And who doesn't like the surfboard?
Nobody doesn't like the surfboard.
No, yeah, exactly. But Breitling also used a cigarette handset in some of their older dive watches.
Right.
And I like it because if you're bold enough to go with a cigarette style hand, it's going to be matched with a very bold, very crazy designed dial.
Right.
And I think that's why.
Absolutely. Well, the doctors were recommending it at the time for pregnant mothers. It's fair.
It's the way to go. Yeah. But the matchstick hands, I mean, they're hard not to like. It's a very simple design. They were probably created by mistake. Somebody was handling a stick handset and dropped it in the loom, and they thought, well, this is pretty neat. Let's put it on the watch, and it took off from there. So
you got your handset in my loom. You got your loom on my handset, right?
Yeah.
So the issue for me with those is it's the level of loom, because they're always a thin handset for that. It's never really wide. It's never really broad. It's not a baton. It's a very, the matchstick is always, it's a real thin style.
Yeah. It's a very thin stick hand.
Yeah. And so like the amount of loom that's there, it lends itself to, I mean, the watch that we're showing it on is a world timer. So it's not entirely a tool design, it's a little bit more elegant.
And that's what I was going to say. So the cigarette hands is very much a tool watch designed hand. You're not going to put that handset on a dress watch.
Correct.
Where your matchstick hand, you can get away with very much putting it on a dress watch, which they have, or on the world timer like this, which is not necessarily a dress watch. It's not necessarily a tool watch, but it's a happy medium somewhere in between, and it works either way.
Right.
So versatility, you know, the matchsticks win there, but as far as design and boldness, I'm going cigarette hands on this one.
I'm with you on that. All right. So next is the lollipop versus the pylon second hand. So we're talking about a seconds hand that's got usually a dot of loom. And this is where it gets interesting because you can have it at the tail end. You can also have it at the tip. It can go on either side. Mm-hmm. But the lollipop is typically at or closer to the tip. And then the pylon is just going to be a really narrow triangular cross section. And it's usually a solid color. You rarely see those that have a different type of loom on it. And so where do you fall there?
Oh, I'm pylon all day long.
Are you
pylon
really?
Second hand. Absolutely.
Oh, I am team lollipop.
I know you are.
All day.
Yep, I know you are.
Day. Okay, why?
You love your lollipops on your Sea Hunters, and you love it on your Devil Diver.
I'm a sucker for a lollipop.
Yep, and see, I'm a sucker for a pylon hand. It's that crazy bold design. That second hand is going to be mated with something off the wall. 99% of the time it is. It's like you said, it's a solid color. It's usually going to be a very bright color. So we're talking bright reds, oranges, yellows. I've seen blues, white, even black. You can do it in black and it looks just fine. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. It's just something about it that just grabs my eye every single time. And if there's a watch that has a pylon second hand, I've got to have it. And almost to my own fault, because I bought a Mumbai special. I bought that yellow roulette dial cami Mumbai special, and it has a pylon second hand. I'm like, oh wow, buy it now. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It is. It's rough. That was rough. See, I go towards the lollipop because the pylon to me is too simple. The pylon is, I don't even need a stamp for that. I just get a pair of scissors and I just cut off the edge of a piece of metal and that little sliver falls off and I'm good to go. The lollipop, there's production that's involved. It's not a simple bit of design. There's a bigger part of the stamp. You've got to counterbalance it. You've got to make sure that all the weight is right because we're talking, it's on the second hand. So it's got the least amount of torque of any of the wheels that are on the dial design. And then with that bit of loom that's all the way out at the tip, you've got to be able to have that balanced exactly right. And to me, just from a design standpoint, the lollipop always, absolutely always. So interesting. And I sort of figured that's where we would be. On that one.
Yeah. So moving on, where are we headed to next?
We have the sword hand versus the syringe hand.
Sword syringe. Okay.
Right. And so we're talking about military handsets here. The sword hand is really like most commonly from the mill sub off of the British MOD. And then the syringe hand is what was used real commonly in like the A11s and the A17 watches. And even a little bit, the Dirty Dozen handsets were all over the place. But the American watches were a little bit more closer towards the syringe hands. And so the syringe hands, right, it's got a bar of loom that comes out to a pointed tip, whereas the sword hand really has more of an angle that goes towards that tip. And so there's a lot more loom that's on the sword hand. So where are you on that? What's your take?
So, okay, follow me here. All right. Okay. The watch that we're picturing here is an Omega Seamaster with the sword hands.
Right.
Sword hands on this watch for me is a no. However, sword hands on the mill sub, thumbs up all day long.
So the mill sub to me is always a little bit broader than the one that we got pictured here. And then even looking on like, the new Seamasters, and they have that hollow version.
And I'll tell you what I have my Seiko Comex watch mod has the broader sword hands. So here's the picture here of it. I love that.
It works.
That wide design like that.
It does work, but for me, it's the syringe hand. Just from an accuracy standpoint,
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say syringe hands on your super compressor that we put up here.
Right.
Fantastic. It is a perfect handset for that dial, that case, that whole design.
I agree, and I see that on like the A17s. I see that it's on a few different style designs. It's something real similar to that, to be honest, on like the Anordain models as well, and they've sort of a hybrid of that. I'm a fan of the syringe, but I can understand why the sword would be used and what the point of it is. And for me, this is not always a preference. This is a complete design choice.
Well,
it's a functional choice.
So that's what I'm saying. When it comes to sword hands, the width of the hand has to match the application that it's going with in order for me to like that. But that syringe hand, I think, will win me over every time. It doesn't matter what it's going to be on. That's just a very nice accent piece to just about anything that it goes on. Okay,
cool. So our next choice, this one gets to be a little bit different, and I had to look for it. And the reason that this is my choice, to be honest. It's the broad arrow versus the Calypso hand. And so the Calypso hand, there are a variety of names for it, and we talked about that at the top of the episode when Mike was talking about the Sea Hunter that I just purchased. And so you can call it kind of a shovel hand, you can call it a snakehead hand, you call it I've heard somebody call it actually too popular on the Rangers.
I don't know if we could say that. Okay,
you can. Constipation hand, what would you prefer?
Moving on. I prefer we move forward.
But I was doing research into it because I was trying to find the handset when I was rebuilding my vintage Oceanographer V, which has got that same handset on it. And the research that I did showed that it was called a Calypso hand. And so it is a fully loomed minutes hand, and it's got this bit of a kind of a spade looking thing at the top, maybe a spearhead, and it's fully loomed.
And that hour hand
versus the broad arrow.
Yeah, the hour hand can vary too. So look at the difference between the handset that's on your V and the hand that's on your Sea Hunter.
Right.
So that tip,
or even the same thing on the Ranger.
Yeah, exactly.
On the Tudor Ranger.
So it can vary a little bit. So comparing the Calypso between the V and the Sea Hunter, I like that Ranger style better.
On the
shorter, fatter. Now, not to say that I don't like the hands that are on the V, and I think it matches it very well. Also, it's worth noting that the hands on the V, your Calypso is your minute hand and not the hour hand. So just about everything that we're talking, where the design goes into that hour hand.
Yes, you're right. And you're totally right. This one and this one's it's different in almost every way. But having lived with this watch for as long as I have, and being able to see it in the dark and seeing how it works with the loom and against the way that those hour plots glow, because it's the Oceanographer V. It's got that distinctive hour plot. I'm a fan of the Calypso over the broad arrow. And the issue with the broad arrow for me is you've got a massive amount of loom there, because it's a huge amount of real estate that's going on. If that gets damaged in any way, it's like, okay, the accuracy is shot, right? It will be part of the tip that's going to go. So I don't know. I don't know where I fall on that. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Calypso hand. And where are you?
So I'm kind of right down the middle of the road on this one. I can't really pick a favorite. I love the broad arrows. I love the watches that use the broad arrow hands. I think the design of the watch just pairs very well. So Speedmasters have broad arrow hands. what are we putting a picture up here? It just this. Oh, this was your little Caravel.
Yeah,
skin
that
diver.
old Caravel that I had.
Yeah. So I have a skin diver. So the Broad Arrow was very popular with your skin divers.
Yeah.
You have I'm drawing a blank. What else use Broad Arrow hands?
Speedmasters.
I said Speedmaster.
Oh.
But in any case, I think it goes back to that big, bold, in your face, hour hand, and that's what's going to catch my eye. So if I have to lean, if I have to choose, if you're making me choose,
I'm making you choose.
I'm going to choose Broad Arrow over the Calypso / Snakehead / Shovel / Ranger. But I really do like those Ranger hands. I really do. So.
All right. No accounting for taste.
Accounting for taste. Get out of here. I think it's very interesting so far that all these options that we've gone through, where you and I are very much set in the ways in which we view watches. You're very much on the functionality side of things, and I'm very much on the aesthetics and design side of things. And I think it's funny, but it's funny that way because we both like a lot of the same stuff, but apparently for very different reasons.
It's where the intersect happens, and that's one of the things that goes on within the hobby. That you've got this kind of give and take, and all right, there's people that collect movements, and there's people that collect case manufacturers, and then there's people that collect design, and you've got all these different spaces that you can live in within the hobby. And it's also interesting that for whatever reason you're collecting the watches that you collect, there's no wrong there. And even if that's not my aesthetic, I can still look at your collection and be like, okay, I can see the point behind this. I can see the aesthetic that's behind this. I can see the joy that's there. I can see the joy that it brings you. And I think we're in an okay spot.
You see, hearing you talk and describe that, it's really, I think we found a way to solve world peace. Because really, that's what the watch fam is we can look at, you can put a watch, XYZ, whatever you want to put, on a table and get people from different walks of life all looking at this watch, and everybody will have a different opinion, but you're all going to like it for one reason or another. And at the end of the day, you're all going to walk away friends. Well, so to solve the problem of world peace, we just need to make everybody a watch lover.
But see, I've always been a fan of the idea for world peace would be bacon. And I am convinced that I can solve the crisis in the Middle East between Islam and Judaism, between Israel and all of their neighbors. I think I can solve that with a good BLT and maybe a pig in a pit barbecue.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we go with one last choice here? And so I'll let you choose. What's the last one you want to go with?
So let's go Art Deco and Bauhaus.
There. That's an excellent.
Let's go there. And I'm going to tell you why I chose that one.
Yeah.
Because I love, and we've had this conversation many a times before, love Art Deco watches. However, I would never wear one.
And you won't wear it because?
Because it doesn't fit the way I wear a watch. It doesn't fit the way I look at a watch. However, they are exquisitely beautiful in design, and the filigree and the case shapes and the dial layouts and the handsets, all beautiful. However, I just don't have it in me to wear one.
And so that puts you pretty solidly in the Bauhaus space.
No, I will select a Art Deco handset any day of the week. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
Well, we're talking from an aesthetic standpoint, and so like Bauhaus is going to be your stark functionality. How can I minimize? What can I like if I'm going to have a kid draw a watch? What are they going to draw? Okay, make that. And you've got your Max Bills, and you've got your Nomos is really big into that. And
what about like Autodromo? Would they fall in that category?
They certainly could. They're in that definitely into that functional space. I'm also thinking of like the mundane rail watch, which is I
love those. Yeah.
Right, and it's a great design. Would you wear one?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't wear one.
Really?
And it's got a lollipop seconds.
It does.
Right. I like the Art Deco better, but I've always been a sucker for Art Deco. Now, the issue that I have with a lot of the Art Deco watches is that it does not hold to a lot of the Art Deco art aesthetic, and with a certain level of asymmetry that goes on, And so a lot of the watches, they have this massive amount of symmetry, whereas a lot of the Art Deco art pieces do not. And I would prefer, in looking at the watches, that there's a little bit of the asymmetry that goes with that. But
there's the difference in our points of view, because I like that. I like that they're not form and function.
Right. And I'm okay with it with it not being the form and function. I would prefer to have less form and less function, because that, to me, that matches more of the Art Deco aesthetic. But between that and Bauhaus, the Art Deco watch is just so much more fun to look at. The case design is there. The handset goes with it. The way that the handset interplays with the dial, the dial on the Bauhaus watches, it's so stark. And there's very little artistry. Most of the Art Deco, the dials have this false shading, so the numerals seem to pop up off of the dial. The handsets are usually cathedral style, or they've got some additional swoops and flourishes to them. They're the diamonds. It's almost like the snowflake hand, and it could be where the snowflake hand came from. But there's a lot of drama to the way that they're designed, and to me, that drama is pleasing. It's aesthetically pleasing. I would rather look at that. That's just me.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. I'm all for that. And maybe I just need to bite the bullet and buy one, if for no other reason, just to have it, to be able to look at it.
You do, because I think that a lot of the aesthetic comes across when you've actually got it. I have a few pieces that are Art Deco that are older watches that are in that, and on paper they don't work, but when you actually wear it, it really does. It really does translate well. It works. They're very, very aesthetically pleasing. So I think that you would enjoy that. I think you like them. What's your last call, sir?
So my last call is something very interesting. Did you know? So today, like I said, we're recording a little early than when this is going out. So today is July 1st. Did you know 81 years ago on this date, Bulova released the world's first television commercial?
They did for the Bulova, but world runs on Bulova time.
World runs on Bulova time, and it was during a baseball game.
Yeah.
It was how long was it? I forget. It was only. I mean, we're talking seconds.
Yeah. Like 7.
It cost them, I think the number is that cost them to run that ad was $9 in 1941.
Right. Yeah. It's like nothing, but in terms of what that was at the time
back then, yeah. I wonder what the conversion would be.
You know what? It still won't be that much, but considering that it was the first one and nobody had any idea how to price stuff, compared to what an average spot at the Super Bowl goes for now.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Let's see. $9 in 1941. I'm looking it up right now. Is how much now? It is the equivalent of $178.96.
Bargain.
Yeah.
Bargain.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
Whereas I think for a Super Bowl spot would be what, 171 million? close to it.
Couple of million for sure. Yeah.
Easily. So
yeah. So
yeah,
that's
they definitely got their money's worth.
Yeah, but that's a cool piece of history because Bulova is very much history of firsts.
Yes.
They have a lot of firsts and a lot of different things. And this just happens to be, the first
one of them.
Television advertisement.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's my last call. Just a cool little history tidbit. What's yours?
You know what? I got nothing. I got no last call. I got nothing. So how can people reach us, Mike?
Well, Stan, this evening, you and I, we make up the Spring Bar Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at the Spring Bar Podcast. You can email us, thespringbarpodcast@gmail.com. On a personal level, I am 120 clicks, all spelled out, one long word, 120 clicks. Stan?
I am Watch Taylor Youth on Instagram. You can find me there. Also, we would be willing to, we always love to see watch shots. We love to see drink shots. We love to see anything else you want to share with us. If you've got a meetup that you want to promote, if there's anything along those lines, please use the hashtag the Spring Bar Podcast, and we'll be happy to help promote your event or whatever it is that you've got going on. But remember, always start with the watch and then go to the drink. Don't start with the drink and then go to the watch, because that's alcohol abuse and that's against the law.
And don't forget, play along at home with this episode.
Please.
So everything that we've been comparing this evening will be up in our stories with a poll. And let's just have some fun. Show us what you would like. And we can share the results, and we'll see, where our listeners fall in percentages, not names.
In percentages. the most valuable of.
We take your personality and turn it into a number. All right, Joe. Until next time. Cheers.
See you guys.